The woman named Wang Shanshan blinked lightly, smiling as she said, "If someone could receive such praise from Sister Mu, I would really like to meet them, if the opportunity arises." Mu Bingmei shook her head, speaking softly, "I'm afraid there won't be such an opportunity. I don't even know where that person went. After we parted ways all those years ago, when I looked back, they had already disappeared beyond the horizon. The chance of them coming to the Sea of Clouds is slim." The middle-aged man from the Wuji sect, who had previously asked the question, clearly held a high position in the sect. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been sitting here with the sect master. At this moment, hearing Mu Bingmei's words, he casually said, listening to Taoist Mu's words, "I too am curious about what kind of person this is, and whether they truly possess the qualities Taoist Mu described. I don't know their name, though. I'd appreciate it if you could share it with me. If I ever meet them, I wouldn't want to miss the chance." His words were somewhat disrespectful, causing Mu Bingmei's brows to furrow. She coldly glanced at the middle-aged man, her tone calm as she replied, "Their name does not need to be shared. If you encounter them in this life, it may not be a blessing." The middle-aged man laughed heartily, seemingly unconcerned. He shook his head and said, "A mere cultivator at the early stage of pure nirvana, after all. I had intended, if I were to meet them, to offer them a chance based on their reputation, but since Taoist Mu has spoken this way, then I shall let it go." The Wuji sect master, an elderly man dressed in white, maintained his usual expression, though inside, he felt displeased. He cast a glance at the middle-aged man but ultimately said nothing. Wang Shanshan, with her sharp wit, smiled brilliantly at this moment, steering the conversation elsewhere. "Sect master, I heard that Sister Li Qianmei has also arrived at the Wuji sect. Do you know where she is?" She then turned to Mu Bingmei, explaining, "Sister Li is one of the rare prodigies of the Sea of Clouds star domain. After cultivating for 1,000 years, she has reached the perfect shattered nirvana stage." Even Mu Bingmei's expression shifted slightly upon hearing this, and she nodded in acknowledgement. Taoist Li has old ties with our Wuji sect's branch, the Origin Reunion sect. She didn't sit here, but went to the Origin Reunion sect's location, the elderly man in white said, his voice tinged with some confusion. "Origin Reunion sect? What rank is it among the star domains?" Wang Shanshan asked, surprised, as it seemed she had never heard of the Origin Reunion sect. "Elder Feng, you saw this with your own eyes. Please share the details with everyone here," the Wuji sect master said, turning his gaze toward Feng Hai, who was seated in front. Feng Hai's expression was somewhat awkward. He stood up and clasped his fist toward Wang Shanshan and Mu Bingmei, then scanned the faces of the senior cultivators around him. He noticed that many were looking at him with curiosity, likely unaware of the details of this matter, only having heard vague rumors. It was no surprise they were confused, for Li Qianmei was widely renowned. How could she have ties with a mere 5th-rank sect, and not just casual ones, but enough to kill a cultivator from a 7th-rank sect? After clearing his throat, Feng Hai chuckled bitterly, saying, "Sect master, I'm not fully aware of the specifics." After Taoist Li arrived, she immediately pointed out that she was looking for the 5th-rank Origin Reunion sect. At that time, Liuangjie from the Celestial Melody sect and Zhao from the Xuanwan sect were involved in some private matters with the Origin Reunion sect. Taoist Li then took action, destroying Zhao's body, and even Liuangjie was almost caught in the same fate. It seems all of this is closely related to a certain person named Liu from the Origin Reunion sect. As soon as these words were spoken, the members of the Wuji sect around them began to murmur in curiosity. Wang Shanshan smiled and said, "Sister Li is usually calm and rarely gets angry. If she acted, there must have been a reason. But I'm curious to know more about this Liu person that Elder Feng mentioned." Feng Hai nodded. "This Liu person is indeed mysterious. I conducted a private investigation and found that he is an elder of the Origin Reunion sect, a distant relative of Liu Yanfei. I then went to the Destiny Archive and discovered that many years ago, the Origin Reunion sect had a person named Liu Zihao. This person was obsessed with alchemy. Many years ago, he went out looking for medicinal herbs, and his whereabouts have been unknown since. I don't know how he met Taoist Li, but it seems she holds him in high regard. Also, regarding the person you mentioned earlier, Liu Yunsong, it seems he also shares a close relationship with Liu Zihao. He spoke up for the Origin Reunion sect, even offending the Celestial Melody sect and the Xuanwan sect. From what he said, Liu Zihao's understanding of the Tao surpasses his own, and he holds Liu Zihao in great esteem, almost as if he had once been enlightened by him. Liu Yunsong once boasted that if Liu Zihao were to come to our Wuji sect, not only would the first of the 5th-rank branches fall, Even a sixth-rank sect would be no match for him. Killing Liu Yungjie from the Celestial Melody sect would be like squashing an ant. Daoist Li didn't harm Liu Yungjie because he had once doubted these words. He even boasted that if Liu Zihao came, he would challenge him in a duel. Daoist Li then gave him the opportunity. After these words, the room fell into complete silence. The cultivators sitting here were all high-ranking members of the sect. They had been paying attention to Liu Yunsong and hoped to cultivate him, but after hearing Feng Hai's words, their minds were now fully occupied with Liu Zihao, the person whom even Liu Yunsong revered. At that moment, on the grand competition platform ahead, Liu Yunsong took only 6 steps forward, yet his mere approach caused the sect master of a 5th-rank branch sect across from him to pale and retreat repeatedly. His mind trembled, as if each of Liu Yunsong's steps echoed within his heartbeat. Without even making a move, his composure had already begun to unravel. This scene, falling into the eyes of those seated in the surrounding stands, instantly drew serious gazes and murmurs of conversation. It was clear to all that Liu Yunsong's steps were fused with his inner realm of intent. Standing there, he seemed one with heaven and earth. The sect master across from Liu Yunsong gave a bitter smile as he backed away. Bowing with cupped fists, he said, "I concede. Fellow Taoist Liu, you truly are a standout of our Wuji sect. I yield wholeheartedly." With that, he turned and gave a deep bow toward the distant stands where the sect master of the Wuji sect sat, then quickly walked off the platform. Thus, the 5th-rank branch sect grand competition approached its end. Due to the arrival of Li Qianmei, the Origin Reunion sect had not participated until now. At this point, only one 5th-rank sect had yet to compete, Origin Reunion sect. A Wuji sect elder responsible for overseeing this round of the competition flickered and appeared mid-air, gazing at the location of the Origin Reunion sect. His voice was calm as he slowly spoke. "Origin Reunion sect, step forward." Still seated in the northern corner, the Origin Reunion sect was shrouded in a stifling atmosphere. Li Qianmei remained seated, staring into the sky, her expression tinged with confusion and reminiscence, as though lost in thought. Liu Yanfei's face was pale as she bit her lower lip. After a long pause, she rose slowly. She was the most advanced cultivator within the Origin Reunion sect, and so it was her duty to compete. After standing, Liu Yanfei looked at her fellow sect members, who turned their gazes toward her. Among them were her 3 senior brothers and her own disciples. With a soft sigh, Liu Yanfei moved like a rainbow-colored butterfly, clouds forming beneath her feet as she floated toward the distant platform. "Master," Sun Yan's eyes shimmered with tears as she watched Liu Yanfei's departing figure. She didn't know what would become of the Origin Reunion sect after this. Perhaps it truly would dissolve. At that moment, silence fell around the entire competition platform. Many present had either witnessed or heard about what had happened within the Origin Reunion sect that day, and now all eyes were filled with anticipation, wondering if that mysterious figure from the sect would appear. Tens of thousands of gazes converged. Liu Yanfei grew even paler, but her eyes were firm. Her pace quickened, and moments later, she landed gently on the platform, directly facing Liu Yunkong. Liu Yunsong looked at her with a complicated expression. "No further matches are needed for the Origin Reunion sect. Let me represent us alone." Liu Yanfei stood on the platform, drawing countless eyes. Though her figure seemed frail, a powerful force had gathered within her. Holding her steady, neither her body nor her mind faltered. "He promised me he would come. So he will come." Liu Yanfei bit her lip and looked up at the sky. Faintly, it was as if she saw a figure above, smiling at her in encouragement. All around, it was dead silent. What should have been an unremarkable match involving a 5th-rank branch sect, Origin Reunion sect, had become something unique. Because of that mysterious man whose name had already begun to spread, this moment had captured the attention of every cultivator watching. Even the 6th and 7th-rank branch sects had turned their eyes toward the stage. "Fellow Taoist Liu, please enlighten me." On the platform, Liu Yanfei's voice was soft but resolute as she bowed slightly toward Liu Yunkong. Liu Yunsong remained silent. Then, after a pause, he suddenly turned his gaze toward the stands where the Wuji sect master and many elders sat. Bowing with cupped fists, he spoke in a powerful, thunderous voice that revealed the strength of his early pure nirvana stage. "Esteemed elders of the main sect, this disciple is unwilling to compete with the Origin Reunion sect. This situation is unjust." From the stands where Mu Bingmei sat, the white-robed elder's brows furrowed. Feng Hai, the elder in charge of this grand competition, grew visibly grim and shouted, "What injustice? Liu Yunsong, what do you mean by that?" His voice boomed, completely overpowering Lu Yunsong's words like a thunderclap shaking the heavens. Lu Yunsong's face turned slightly pale. With his cultivation level, he was nothing before a great divine ability elder like Feng Hai. Still, he took a deep breath, bowed again, and declared, "This disciple knows someone from the Origin Reunion sect. His cultivation is profound, and his understanding of the path of the heavens far surpasses my own. If he arrives, I am no match for him. If I were to compete with Origin Reunion sect before his arrival and secure a victory, it would be unjust to them. I, Lu Yunsong, wish to fight, but only with him. My purpose in joining this grand competition is precisely to battle him and test our Dao fruits. Should I win, the victory would be true. If I lose, I will have no regrets." His words caused a wave of uproar among the surrounding cultivators. That mysterious figure from the Origin Reunion sect had already become a widespread subject of rumor. But now, with Lu Yunsong's declaration, the reputation of this yet unseen individual soared once more, reaching a near-mythic peak. At that moment, almost everyone was wondering, what kind of person was he? What divine arts did he possess, that he could inspire such resolve in Lu Yunsong and such faith in Li Qianmei? Will your Grand Elder be attending this time? The white-robed sect master of the Wuji sect asked in a deep voice. After hearing what Lu Yunsong had said, his interest in this Lu Zihao grew stronger. Especially considering that, although Lu Zihao was said to be from the Origin Reunion sect, that sect was but a branch of the Wuji sect. In the end, this person was still a disciple of the Wuji sect. Before the Grand Elder departed, he did say he would come, Lu Yanfei replied coolly, but her tone was firm. Good. Then we shall wait for him. I want to see for myself what kind of man this Lu Zihao really is. As for the competition between your Origin Reunion sect and the Violet Dao sect, put it on hold for now. Elder Feng, have the 6th rank sects begin their matches. The white-robed elder let out a hearty laugh, clearly in high spirits. The competition among the 6th rank branch sects officially began. On the platform, various sects immediately unleashed their strength, causing thunderous booms to echo. Yet, these displays failed to truly capture the attention of the tens of thousands of cultivators watching. Their eyes remained fixed on the viewing platform where the Wuji sect disciples stood. Fellow Daoist Mu, the middle-aged man with the surname Zhou said with a flicker of interest in his eyes, you heard the earlier words as well. I wonder, how does this Lu Zihao from the Cloud Sea Star domain compare to the person you were speaking of? Mu Beimei had remained silent ever since Lu Yunsong spoke. Deep down, she felt something strange, as if this Lu Zihao mentioned by Lu Yunsong was someone she knew all too well. Instead of answering the man, she turned to Lu Yunsong and said in a soft yet distant voice, Can you describe Lu Zihao's appearance? Lu Yunsong looked at Mu Beimei and felt his heart stir. Hearing her speak, he didn't hide the admiration in his eyes. He nodded and said, he has long white hair and prefers to wear white robes. As he spoke, Lu Yunsong gave a wry smile. Raising his right hand, he made a grasping motion in the air. A storage rift tore open, and a jade slip flew out. He caught it, focused briefly, and imprinted Wang Lin's appearance onto it. With a surge of primordial energy, the jade slip burst apart with a snap, scattering into fragments. From within, a translucent figure began to form. The figure wore white robes with snow-white hair. Though his expression was cold, there was an underlying trace of loneliness, and an indescribable aura quietly surrounded him. The moment this apparition appeared, 2 elders from the Wuji sect abruptly stood up, staring wide-eyed at the image. One of them cried out in shock, It's him. Mu Beimei trembled as well. Gazing at the figure, her emotions surged uncontrollably, but she quickly suppressed them. In their place rose a deep, inexplicable sorrow. It was as if a lonely soul had suddenly encountered a long-lost relative in a foreign land. She bit her lip, frozen in place. Lu Yanfei also looked confused, her gaze fixed on the phantom. A bitter ache spread in her heart. Lu Yunsong was stunned. Before he could speak, a streak of rainbow light roared down from the north of the grand competition platform, thundering like a storm of battle honed over a century. In an instant, the light transformed into a bolt of lightning, and Li Qianmei, with her striking blue hair, appeared outside the Wuji sect viewing platform. She stood motionless, her eyes locked on the phantom figure in white, then on the 2 elders who had stood up. You too, have seen him before? Li Qianmei's voice was calm, yet carried a faint tremble even she hadn't noticed. A silhouette from 100 years ago rose in her mind. She had clung to this image through a century of slaughter, braving the punishment of the demon sect just to come to the Wuji sect, only for the sake of the man who haunted her heart. 100 years wasn't long, but it wasn't short either. Even Li Qianmei herself didn't fully understand the strange emotions that stirred within her. But in every battle over the past century, each time she left the field, wounded and exhausted, it was his image that appeared in her mind. Li Qianmei's arrival immediately prompted Wang Shanshan to rise, ready to speak, but she paused, sensing that something was wrong with Li Qianmei's state, and her heart was suddenly stirred. This was Mu Bingmei's first time seeing Li Qianmei. Looking at this woman, her beauty, her demeanor, Mu Bingmei couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy. She bit her lip and fell silent. The Wuji sect master, the white-robed elder, frowned and turned to the two standing elders. One of them, still visibly shaken, took a deep breath and said gravely, "I never imagined he was Lu Zihao." What Lu Yunsong described wasn't entirely accurate. This person is no pure nirvana cultivator. Just recently, while taking disciples to the chaotic beast mist realm for training, I saw him with my own eyes. He slew an 11th rank flame centipede spirit as if it were nothing, and even gravely injured a 12th rank ferocious beast. Were it not for his internal injuries, I fear even I wouldn't be a match for him. As soon as he spoke, shock swept through all the elders of the Wuji sect. Had someone else said these words, perhaps they wouldn't have believed them. But this was Elder Wu Tian, always reserved and reliable, and that alone made his words carry tremendous weight. So Elder Wu has seen this person too. I myself haven't seen his true face, only a phantom silhouette. Some time ago, I received reports from people of the 6th and 7th branch sects. Someone charged through the 5th rank star domain into the 6th, moving with astonishing speed. Rumor has it he's at the perfect shattered nirvana stage, perhaps even at the first decay of heaven and man. He swept through countless continents and no one dared stand in his way. He crossed the 6th rank, broke through formation restrictions, entered the 7th rank star domain, and when 3 shattered nirvana cultivators from a branch sect tried to block him, he unleashed the soul subjugation seal. With one strike, he destroyed several continents of the primordial continent, forcing entire sects to evacuate their lands to clear a path for him. Unhindered, he sped straight into the 8th rank star domain. The words of this other man who stood up sent another wave of shock through the crowd. Li Qianmei listened intently to every word. She bit her lip, but her bright eyes gleamed with a hint of a smile. Lifting her gaze to the sky, her heart was overflowing with joy. Lu Yanfei's mind had gone completely blank. It took her a long moment to recover. The shock in her heart was overtaken by delight. She understood. She knew. He had not forgotten the promise from a century ago. He had crossed the 6th, 7th, and 8th rank star domains. Cutting through the stars and the moon, he had come. Even Wang Shanshan had an unusual light in her eyes. Images rose in her mind, visions she herself had conjured, of a man in white robes with white hair, approaching from afar like a roaring gale. What puzzled her was that he actually used the soul subjugation seal. Lu Yunsong wore a bitter smile. He had never imagined that before his brother Lu even arrived, he'd already caused such an uproar. This had nothing to do with Lu Yunsong himself, but everything to do with the words of those 2 elders of the Wuji sect. The entire Wuji sect viewing platform fell silent. The sect master of the Wuji sect, an old man in white robes, let out a long breath. He could no longer doubt it. His view of that mysterious man had changed entirely. No longer did he look upon him as a junior, but as an equal. Lu Yanfei, don't leave. Stay here and wait. I expect once the 6th rank branch sect grand competition ends, your grand elder will arrive. The Wuji sect master cleared his throat, his eyes filled with approval as he looked at Lu Yanfei. Li Qianmei did not leave either. At Wang Shanshan's invitation, she sat down beside her. The moment she did, Mu Bingmei's eyes, sharp as lightning, swept over. Across Wang Shanshan, the 2 women's gazes locked for an instant. Wang Shanshan, caught between them, quickly made introductions. But then she suddenly felt a chill, blinked, and leaned back a little, leaving Mu Bingmei and Li Qianmei facing each other without any barrier. "Miss Li, you truly are a natural beauty with remarkable cultivation," Mu Bingmei said softly, her voice calm yet icy, before withdrawing her gaze. Li Qianmei's nature was serene. She didn't understand why this stunningly beautiful stranger was looking at her that way. As Mu Bingmei's eyes turned away, Li Qianmei spoke gently, "In terms of beauty, I can't compare to you, Taoist friend Mu." The people of the Wuji sect seemed to grow even more eager for this grand competition. But what they were really waiting for was him, the one those 2 elders had spoken of. The contest between the various 6th rank branch sects seemed to lose their luster, except for one person who shone just like Lu Yunsong had in the past. This man was Yuan Fei, the chief disciple of the 6th rank Colossus sect. He had spent years in secluded cultivation and had left the sect for a long time, only returning 2 centuries ago, missing 2 branch sect grand competitions. He looked like a middle-aged man, his cultivation at the early shattered nirvana stage, and his moves were ruthless. Anyone who faced him was severely wounded. In his early years, he was already the top among the younger disciples of the 6th rank branch sects. If he hadn't left for so long, the Celestial Melody sect wouldn't have claimed the top spot, and Lu Yingjie wouldn't have earned such fame. Now, representing the younger generation of his sect, even Lu Yingjie kept his distance, coldly sneering in silence but not stepping onto the platform. For now, Yuan Fei alone stood in the spotlight. At that moment, he stood on the grand competition platform, his eyes sharp as lightning, staring at the main sect's viewing platform. His gaze locked directly on Mu Bingmei and the other 2 women, the heat in his eyes completely undisguised. I wonder, compared to this mysterious figure Miss Li spoke of, how do I measure up? His voice boomed like thunder. Li Qianmei looked at Yuan Fei calmly on the platform and replied with only 2 words. Not even close. Yuan Fei fell silent, then gave a soft laugh, seemingly unbothered. His eyes flashed and settled on Lu Yunsong in the stands. His voice turned cold. Lu Yunsong, last grand competition I was away. Today, do you still dare to challenge me? Lu Yunsong's eyes glinted coldly. After a long moment, he said in a low voice, if Brother Lu from the Origin Reunion sect does not arrive, I will fight you. Time passed slowly. The 6th rank branch sect competition drew to its end, but the one everyone waited for, Lu Zihao of the Origin Reunion sect, still had not appeared. As the competition for the 7th rank branch sect was about to begin, previous competitions for the 4th, 5th, and 6th rank star domains had merely been transitions, with the real excitement lying in the 7th rank branch sect competition. However, in this instance, the first place in the 5th rank star domain had yet to be determined. If this delay continued, it would be problematic. Moreover, there were many onlookers from various sects, including quite a few from outside sections. This made the unresolved matter of the 5th rank sect even more inappropriate. Feng Hai hesitated and looked at the elder in a white robe, who pondered for a moment before glancing at Lu Yinfei and Lu Yunsong. As the sect master, he had to consider the situation as a whole. With the branch sect competition being a grand event, allowing the 5th rank sect to continue its delay would indeed be improper. We've waited long enough. Even if Lu Zihao comes later, there will be nothing more to say, the elder in the white robe said, his eyes flashing. He spoke in a deep voice. Lu Yunsong, Lu Yinfei, you 2 go to the competition platform and complete the 5th rank sect's contest. Upon hearing this, all the surrounding cultivators immediately focused their attention. Lu Yunsong remained silent for a moment, then stood up under the gaze of the elder in the white robe, cupped his fist toward Lu Yinfei, and took to the air, heading straight for the platform. Lu Yinfei bit her lip. Although she knew that the opponent would likely arrive later, she had no choice but to fight now. With a soft sigh, Lu Yinfei transformed into a colorful butterfly and flew toward the competition platform. She gently landed on it, her gaze growing increasingly determined. Even if he doesn't come, I will continue this battle. This matter was an internal issue of the Wuji sect, and Li Qianmei had no reason to interfere. She silently watched Lu Yinfei's figure, but in her heart, she had already made up her mind. If the Origin Reunion sect disbanded, she would take all its members to the Skybreaker sect. As Lu Yunsong and Lu Yinfei reached the platform, tens of thousands of cultivators around them immediately fell silent, their eyes glued to the scene. This time, the Wuji sect's competition had drawn attention to the Origin Reunion sect due to a single person. This small sect, for the first time, was remembered by countless cultivators. All of this was because of the one person who had yet to arrive. Not all gazes were filled with goodwill. Lu Yingjie, from the Celestial Melody sect, glared at Lu Yinfei and Lu Yunsong with a look full of hatred. That ridiculous person. Weren't you all sure he would come? Lu, I will see if he is truly as amazing as you say. Lu Yingjie clenched his fists. Further away, at the Xuanwan sect, a dark cloud hung in the air. Zhao Long had lost his physical body and now only his essence spirit remained, drifting beside the Grand Elder and Sect Master. His expression was weak, but the venom in his eyes far surpassed Lu Yingjie's. Brother Zhao, don't worry. I will not let this go easily. If that person doesn't come, fine. But if he does, I will make sure he dies on the spot. Even if Li Qianmei tries to stop us, she is just one person, not the Skybreaker sect. We won't offend her, but that mysterious Lu must die. The events that transpired earlier on the Wuji sect's platform were too far away for anyone other than Wuji sect members to know. Outsiders had only seen a blurry, illusory figure, unable to discern any details. Even Yuan Fei, from the 6th rank sect, narrowed his eyes as he stared at the two on the platform. A cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He was eager for the mysterious person to show up so he could witness firsthand what divine powers this individual possessed. Lu Yinfei calmly stood there, a feeling of loneliness gradually rising in her heart. Countless eyes were upon her, but she cared not for them. Yet the person she had been waiting for over 100 years still had not arrived. She lifted her head and gazed at the sky, her eyes shimmering but not shedding a single tear. Instead, she turned and looked at Lu Yunsong, speaking softly. "Lu Daoist, please guide me." Lu Yunsong, also pulling his gaze away from the sky as if waiting for something, looked at Lu Yinfei and said in a deep voice, "I will not hold back in this battle. Be prepared." Lu Yinfei smiled bitterly, but her determination made her seem uniquely beautiful at this moment. She gently nodded, took several steps back, and formed a hand seal. Immediately, the primordial energy of heaven and earth surged. The energy formed a vortex in the air, sweeping with a rumble, but the vortex suddenly went wild, as if some strange power descended from the sky and emerged from the void, merging with the vortex, stirring the winds and clouds. At this moment, the sky and earth seemed to change color. The vortex grew uncontrollably, and with a resounding boom, it broke free from Lu Yinfei's control, flying straight toward the sky. In that instant, Lu Yinfei froze, but quickly, her body began to tremble violently, and she suddenly looked up. Not only her, at the same moment, Lu Yunsong's entire body shook as well. His essence spirit seemed to quiver inside him, as if an indescribable pressure was descending from the distant sky, roaring down upon them. This pressure was so immense that it seemed to shake the world. The overwhelming will within it was something he could not resist. This will was familiar to him, very familiar. Suddenly, he looked up, his gaze fixed on the sky. At that moment, apart from the two of them, nearly 100,000 cultivators in the surrounding stands instantly felt the crushing aura descending from the heavens. Thunder roared suddenly in the sky, transforming into deafening rumbles that shook the world, reverberating endlessly until they seemed to drown out everything between heaven and earth. Bolts of silver lightning snaked across the entire sky, their numbers countless, as if the entire starry firmament's thunder had been drawn here by some mysterious power, replacing the heavens and the earth themselves. Thunder rolled in waves, altering the very colors of the world, the wind and clouds spiraling wildly. Everything was engulfed in a sea of lightning. Those interwoven bolts formed a net of thunder that condensed in the heavens, crashing down with unstoppable might. High above, a white-robed figure slowly emerged in the midst of that endless, earth-shaking thunder. His long white hair flowed freely, as if stirring the heavenly lightning itself, turning the world into a thunderpool hell. The thunder roared like the rage of some ancient beast, shaking the hearts and minds of all cultivators below, leaving them stunned in fear. The billowing heavenly thunder had come to welcome one person. "He is here." Li Qiamei suddenly stood up, staring dazedly into the sky. Through the thunder, she instantly recognized that familiar figure from a century ago, the person she had parted with so long before. Seeing him now, striding through the storm of heavenly lightning, her heart grew calm. As if this was how it was always meant to be, that he would arrive, just like this, stepping through endless thunder, to reach her heart. Mu Bingmei's expression grew complex, a tangle of unspoken emotions stirring within her. She silently watched that familiar yet somehow distant man surrounded by thunder. Countless memories rose before her eyes, carrying a bitterness she could not name, a sour ache beyond words, yet also a faint warmth in her loneliness. In that moment, she bowed her head deeply. Tears welled up in Lu Yinfei's eyes, 2 lines of joyful tears spilling down her cheeks. As she looked at the approaching figure in the sky, it felt as if all the grievances she had ever suffered had finally found release, flowing out with her tears. Wang Lin had come clad in thunder, cutting through heaven and earth, stepping across the cloud sea. He had come. In that instant, it was not only those who knew Wang Lin who reacted. All the cultivators around them, even those of the Wuji sect, were left in shock. Feng Hai shot to his feet, his pupils contracting, fixed on that white figure descending in the lightning. With his cultivation, he could clearly sense that the power of heaven and earth at this moment was far beyond what an ordinary shattered nirvana cultivator could stir. Only someone who had grasped the deepest laws and reached the perfect shattered nirvana stage could wield such a transformation of heaven and earth energy. Not just him, even the Crimson Elder sharply inhaled, his mind quaking. His cultivation and concepts were tied to the power of thunder, so he felt it even more distinctly. Deep within, he sensed that even his own essence spirit, half-merged with lightning, felt an urge to kneel and worship. As if what he was looking at was not a cultivator, but a divine thunder that had existed since the dawn of creation, eternal and unshakable. That middle-aged man surnamed Zhou from the Wuji sect also stared like a bolt of lightning, fixated on Wang Lin within the heavenly thunder. His mind trembled, a faint terror welling up, terrified because he had not sensed a single hint of Wang Lin's arrival until the thunder had split the sky. This ability to conceal one's presence so perfectly sent chills down his spine. But the more he thought, the more he realized this was not just a divine art. It was because this person's cultivation was simply far, far beyond his own. Meanwhile, the elder who had once taken his disciples to the chaotic beast mist realm remained calm. He was the only one from the Wuji sect who had witnessed Wang Lin act before. With a long sigh, he clasped his fist and spoke. The day I met Brother Lu, I never imagined we would be of the same sect. Wu Jiangping, pay my respects, fellow Taoist. Apart from him, another elder who had glimpsed Wang Lin's illusory shadow in the past now fixed his gaze solemnly. Before, he had not fully believed the rumors, but now he was convinced. This man truly had the power to sweep through 6th and 7th rank star domains. The sect master of the Wuji sect, whose cultivation was the highest present, though not the strongest in all of Wuji sect, he had still reached the first decay of heaven and man. His eyes gleamed brightly. Precisely because he stood at this rare realm, he saw what no one else could see. His gaze locked onto the spot between Wang Lin's brows. Though it looked empty, the old man could clearly sense that a law was hidden within Wang Lin's forehead. What horrified him most was that this law did not belong to heaven and earth at all, but existed beyond them, as if a brand new law had been born outside of creation itself. Faced with this law, even he felt a hint of reverence. Especially the aura Wang Lin carried, so full of shifting truth and illusion, that even in a short time, he could not tell what was real and what was false. That was what chilled him most of all. To fight such a cultivator to the death, he had no confidence of winning. This person was indeed recovering from injuries, but those injuries were not severe. It seems he arrived late for good reason. Lu Lingjie stared blankly at the figure in white amidst the thunderous sky, a sudden and overwhelming sense of soul-crushing dread surging through him like a tidal wave, swallowing him whole. His body trembled. This was terror, fear, pure panic. The moment he recalled how he had previously offended the Origin Reunion sect, speaking flippantly and even declaring a desire to challenge this very person, his scalp went numb and his eyes lost focus. Even the disciples of the Celestial Melody sect near him were visibly shaken. He really possesses such cultivation. What Lu Yunxong said about him crushing me like an ant, it's actually true. Lu Lingjie's mind was thrown into chaos, his face pale, his thoughts spiraling in dismay. And he wasn't alone. Far away, the members of Xun'er's sect had suddenly fallen silent. Zhao Long stared dazedly at the figure in the sky, his expression rapidly shifting, pupils contracting as his mind went blank. Beside him, the sect master and the first elder of Xun'er's sect had gone deathly pale. The moment they saw Wang Lin, they immediately recognized him as the one who had once forced them to mobilize all their power to relocate their sect's continent, just to give him a clear path, and to receive and see him off with utmost respect. It's him. The two exchanged glances, each seeing the same horror reflected in the other's eyes. Among the nearly 100,000 cultivators seated in the surrounding stands, most of whom were from 6th or 7th rank star domains, there was scarcely a person who didn't know of the earth-shattering event that had occurred in their realms recently. Even if they hadn't witnessed it personally, they had heard of it in vivid detail through countless retellings. A few older cultivators had even seen Wang Lin's blurred form with their own eyes. Now, upon seeing him clearly, a wave of astonishment rippled outward. It's him. The one who rampaged through the 6th rank star domain. No one could block his path. I once heard our sect's ancestor say this man used a single divine art to break through the formation barriers of the 6th and 7th rank star domains. Even the ancestor was shocked. I saw it with my own eyes. He used the soul subjugation seal to tear through all resistance, forcing numerous sects to move their continents just to avoid him. It said 3 shattered Nirvana cultivators tried to stop him, but were all badly wounded and fled. Not just 3. My senior brother saw it himself. 7 shattered Nirvana cultivators attacked at once, but with a single move, he killed 4 and severely injured the rest. Even an entire primordial continent collapsed under that one divine art. The chatter exploded. but was instantly silenced by a deafening roar of thunder that seemed to suppress the entire world. The thunderclouds converged above and, in a booming crescendo, all merged into Wang Lin's body. The heavens quieted, no trace of thunder remained. Only one figure stood clad in white, his silver hair drifting with the wind, as he descended step by step from the sky, landing on the grand competition platform beside Lu Yanfei. "I'm late," Wang Lin said softly, looking at the weary Lu Yanfei, a hint of guilt in his eyes. Tears welled in Lu Yanfei's eyes. Looking at Wang Lin, she shook her head and smiled, her voice gentle. "You're not late. As long as you came, it's never too late. Go back now. With me here, no one from the Origin Reunion sect will be harmed. For this grand competition, I will ensure that Origin Reunion sect becomes the top sect, whether it's among 5th, 6th, or 7th rank sects." With a sweep of his sleeve, Wang Lin summoned a gentle wind that enveloped Lu Yanfei and instantly transported her to the spectator platform beside the Wuji sect members. Wang Lin's gaze then shifted toward the Wuji sect section. He clasped his hands in greeting toward the elder who had spoken to him earlier, but then froze. He saw Li Qianmei and Mu Bingmei. His eyes paused for a moment before he withdrew his gaze and stood silently on the platform, looking ahead at Lu Yunsong, whose expression was complicated and tinged with a bitter smile. "Brother Lu's cultivation is nothing like it was 100 years ago. Our Violet Dao sect will concede this time," Lu Yunsong said with a wry smile, bowing slightly. Had Wang Lin's cultivation been just marginally higher than his own, Lu Yunsong might still have had the courage to fight. But now, standing before Wang Lin, his mind was already trembling, his thoughts disordered. What terrified him most was that even his Dao intent was on the verge of collapse. It felt as though an invisible vortex existed within Wang Lin, pulling in all surrounding Dao intents. Any moment of distraction, and one's very intent could be completely devoured. Wang Lin smiled faintly, though his expression grew cold. Calmly, he said, "Brother Lu, I have something to ask. I hope you'll answer truthfully. Lu Yanfei is injured. Who did this to her?" Without hesitation, Lu Yunsong pointed toward the Celestial Melody sect. "Celestial Melody sect, Luingjie." Then he gestured again, this time toward the Xuanwan sect. "Xuanwan sect, Zhao Long." It seems these two men harbor lustful thoughts toward Miss Lu. Wang Lin nodded, turned his gaze toward the Celestial Melody sect, and a flash of icy light appeared in his eyes. In a blur, he stepped forward, tearing through the void as he charged straight toward the Celestial Melody sect. Within the Celestial Melody sect, Lu Yingxie's expression changed drastically. His body shot backward as he attempted to retreat. His master and the sect's elders, who were by his side, all wore grave expressions and rushed out. Especially his master, who seized Lu Yingxie with one hand and, in a flicker of light, transformed into a streak of rainbow, heading urgently toward the seating area of the Wuji sect. The sect master of the Celestial Melody sect stepped forward, blocking Wang Lin's path. His face bore a respectful expression as he cupped his hands and was about to explain. However, Wang Lin did not listen to his words at all. Seeing the person blocking his way, Wang Lin raised his right hand and waved it forward. A deafening rumble echoed as a violent wind howled, mixed with thunder. In an instant, it collided with the sect master of the Celestial Melody sect. The sound of a tremendous explosion echoed across the heavens and earth, shaking the very ground. The sect master of the Celestial Melody sect spat out blood, his body instantly collapsing. With a scream, his essence spirit flew out, revealing intense fear. Wang Lin did not pause for a moment and charged directly toward the elder carrying Lu Yingxie. His pace wasn't fast, but with each step he took, the atmosphere seemed to vibrate, and everyone observing felt as though their minds were shaking, their essence spirits trembling. The entire platform, surrounded by countless cultivators, fell completely silent. "Main sect, save me." Lu Yingxie's master's forehead beaded with sweat, and his eyes revealed a look of terror as he screamed frantically toward the Wuji sect's people. "Friend Lu, please." Feng Hai hesitated for a moment, cupped his hands, and was about to speak. But he was interrupted by Wang Lin's raised hand. "Anyone who insults my Origin Reunion sect must die. Whoever tries to save him shares the same fate," Wang Lin declared, his right hand lifting and pointing forward. He had come to the Wuji sect to intimidate everyone, to build momentum for the Origin Reunion sect, and to pave the way for the Celestial Ascension ladder. As he spoke, a vast rumble filled the air. The finger of heavenly fortune suddenly manifested, and the entire world trembled as the enormous finger descended, unleashing an overwhelming pressure that made every onlooker gasp in awe. They were all stunned by the immense finger that seemed to dominate the very heavens and earth, their minds shaken to the core. The fingertip descended with a howl, and in an instant, it landed on Luingjie and his master. A tremendous crash sounded, and the earth itself seemed to tremble. Even this cultivation star shook in response. A blood mist exploded. Luingjie and his master's bodies shattered instantly, their essence spirits disintegrating and vanishing into the void. A gust of wind blew through, spreading the stench of blood across the heavens and earth. Kill Luingjie as one would crush an ant. The words of Lu Yunsong from many days ago echoed in the ears of those who knew, like a chilling winter wrapping around them. Wang Lin turned around and looked toward the Xuanwan sect. With one step, he began to move,